Chris Kluwe, former punter for the Minnesota Vikings, carried out by police during a city council meeting in Huntington Beach, California, as he protested what he called the MAGA plague. Let's take a look.
Unfortunately, it's clear that this council does not listen, so instead I'm going to take my time to say what MAGA has stood for these past 3 weeks. MAGA stands for trying to erase trans people from existence. MAGA stands for resegregation and racism. MAGA stands for censorship and book bans. MAGA stands for firing air traffic controllers while planes are crashing. MAGA stands for firing the people overseeing our nuclear arsenal. MAGA stands for firing military veterans and those serving them at the VA, including canceling research on veteran suicide. MAGA stands for cutting funds to education, including for disabled children. MAGA is profoundly corrupt, unmistakably anti-democracy, and most importantly, MAGA is explicitly a Nazi movement. You may have replaced a swastika with a red hat, but that is what it is. I will now engage in the time-honored American tradition of peaceful civil disobedience.
Get the heck! Get out!
Carry that communist out of that meeting. I say, there haven't been any air traffic controllers fired. I don't think that the cattle cars have come to take away the trans people yet. I don't feel like I'm a Nazi. You're calling me a Nazi. Calling a lot of people Nazis. You're calling the people who elected Donald Trump, everybody in every battleground state that Donald Trump swept. You're calling them a Nazi. Go yourself. That little speech that you gave, that was a touchback. Chris Kluwe, idiot. Megyn Kelly knows what's up. I will say this for Chris Kluwe. I fully support his right to go into public and say things that I disagree with. I think pretty much everything he said there is profoundly false. Some of it objectively false. You can't even debate it, but I will fight to the death for his right to stand up at a meeting and be an idiot. Because I get to come on this program and I get to call it as I see it too. That's what makes America different. That's what J.D. Vance was referring to at the Munich Security Conference. It's why I'm so troubled about 60 Minutes sitting down with German prosecutors and the interviewer playing footsie with them while they talk about the erosion of the basic fundamental rights of the German people. Far too many people within our country want to see free speech curtailed, limited, broken. Megyn Kelly understands what's up. Let's listen to Megyn Kelly on the subject of free speech and why it's so important to everything that we hold dear as Americans.
People today, they actually think hate speech is unconstitutional. Mm-hmm. Okay, it's not. Just for those of you playing at home, it's not. Hate speech is not unconstitutional. It may be offensive, but welcome to America. We're allowed to offend here. Mm-hmm. Right? So.
Can you say that one more time? I just want to be sure everybody heard what you just said.
Welcome to America. We're allowed to offend here. There's nothing more American than getting up there and saying the thing because you genuinely feel it, or just to remind people that's the beauty of being born here. There are places all over the world that would kill for that right. They would kill for that right. And people are trying to erode it right now in this country. It's the bedrock of who we are. And so if we don't fight for it, we will lose it.
And we've got millions and millions of people who don't even appreciate it. People who have had it so good their entire life to be born in this country where you can speak your mind without fear of them coming to get you and take you away, as we are seeing ratcheting up throughout Europe, the United Kingdom as well, for that matter. Chris Kluwe called Donald Trump and Donald Trump's supporters Nazis. Well, I'm offended by that. That hurts my feelings. You called me a Nazi, punter. Okay? Does that mean that if we lived in the kind of country that Chris Kluwe presumably voted for? Remember Tim Walz? I'll say it again. I'll say it until I'm blue in the face. There's no right to hateful speech, as Megyn Kelly just pointed out. Wrong. Not if you believe in the First Amendment. There's no such thing as misinformation. Well, Chris Kluwe was spewing misinformation and hate. In the country that he wants to live in, I assume that that's the kind of thing that you wouldn't have the right to do. So you're standing up in the country where you have the right to call people Nazis. You have the right to say things that are completely inaccurate, objectively. No air traffic controllers fired. That's just simply not true. That's not even opinion. All right? So he's spewing misinformation. He's spewing hate. But I'll stand up for his right to do it because I don't want to live in the country where we lose our right to say what we believe. Gayle King is another on CBS this morning. She's talking with the CEO of Delta Airlines, Ed Bastian, and I don't think the direction of Mr. Bastian's answer matched what Gayle King was angling for.
The Trump administration recently fired many employees of the FAA administration. Do those cuts worry you, and do you think that impacts the safety? I know you just said it's the safest way to travel, but after looking at all these mishaps, a lot of people are very nervous. Do these cuts affect you?
The cuts do not affect us, Gayle. I've been in close communication with the Secretary of Transportation. I understand that the cuts at this time are something that are raising questions, but the reality is there's over 50,000 people that work at the FAA, and the cuts, I understand, were 300 people, and they were in non-critical safety functions. The Trump administration has committed to investing deeply in terms of improving the overall technologies that are used in the air traffic control systems and modernizing the skies. They've committed to hiring additional controllers and investigators and safety investigators. So, no, I'm not concerned with that at all.
So how about that, Gayle? He's not concerned about it at all. They weren't critical safety roles. They're trying to do everything that they can right out of the gate. I mean, you want to talk about not giving somebody even the beginning of a fair chance. Right away, Trump's been president for 4 days, and you got Margaret Brennan saying to J.D. Vance, well, what about prices? He's been president for 4 days at the time, was J.D. Vance's response. And now, of course, we had a tragedy in Washington, D.C. We had the plane flip that was Canada-bound, flipping there in Canada. And suddenly, immediately, we got to do everything we can to try to tie this to the Donald Trump agenda. That plane flipped over because of Donald Trump. Do you realize how stupid you sound when you say things like that? Clay Travis tweeting, "It doesn't matter what Trump says. The legacy media disagrees with him. Future historians are going to marvel at how crazy the left wing became in this country. I don't think we've ever seen anything like the woke virus." And look at this Washington Post headline that Clay is referring to. Trump says there are two sexes. Experts in science says it's not binary. Since when? Since fucking when? There have been about 10,000 generations of human beings since the dawn of humanity, somewhere in that ballpark. We only got confused about the fact that there are two fucking sexes in about the last 15 minutes. I think history is going to record Donald Trump as being correct, and the experts, who's the fucking expert that doesn't understand men and women? Who doesn't understand XY chromosome and XX chromosome? Yes, there are genetic abnormalities and anomalies that occur in an exceedingly small percentage of cases, where you have people who have complicated genitalia. I believe complicated genitalia was the name of Ronnie T-Shirt's jazz fusion band back when he was in college. But look, let's understand the reality. 99% plus of the time, we're talking about male or female, clear cut. But the experts would have you believe, not so fast. There's actually 3,147 genders. Fuck off with that. Tired of the nonsense. History is going to record this as one of the most bizarre times ever in the history of modern society. And they're going to wonder why it took us so long to turn things around. But thank God we're in the process of that. It's almost easy to forget after the first month of the Trump administration what it was like for the last 4 years. Take a look at this. ABC News asking, who's in charge with Doge? They're deeply concerned now about who's in charge of what's going on with Doge. And you can see Wesley Hunt here tweeting, after 4 years of this, suddenly now we wonder who's in charge. We all know Joe Biden wasn't running the country. Joe Biden didn't know where he was half the fucking time. I exaggerate only slightly, because if you were paying attention, we all saw it. The clear-cut signs of dementia. As Bob Dylan once said, you don't have to be a weatherman to know which way the wind blows. I'm not an expert on dementia, but I know when I see somebody that is declining. And Joe Biden was clearly declining throughout his presidency, and the real reason that the Democrats wanted that first debate with Donald Trump so early, earlier than we had seen a general election debate in years and years and years and years, is because privately they knew there was a chance he was going to go out there and fuck up profoundly because of his deficiencies. And that's exactly what happened, and they wanted to buy themselves enough time to reset and put their chosen candidate in place, which of course was Kamala Harris, who was not selected by the Democratic primary voters. She was anointed by the Democratic power brokers. Now, as far as who's in control of Doge, I assume that that's Elon Musk, who is working at the behest of President Donald Trump. Now, I'll tell you who's not in charge in the NBA, and that's American-born players. Red-blooded American players. What happened to the great American players? Well, there are still plenty. But did you know that the last 6 MVPs in the National Basketball Association have all been foreign-born? We haven't had an American-born NBA MVP since James Harden in 2018. The goddamn beard is the last guy to do it. And that was, unthinkable. If you go back to the era of the Dream Team, when I believe the Dream Team's average margin of victory in the 1992 Olympics was 43 points. I'm pretty sure. You can fact check me on that. I feel like it was 43 points a game that they won by. Just absolutely laying the wood to every other country in the world. It would have been unthinkable if you had said to a 21-year-old Ricky Cobb in the summer of 1992, hey, guess what? When you're in your 50s, foreign players are going to be dominating the NBA. They're going to be racking up MVP awards year after year after year. And Stephen A. Smith thinks it's a problem. And let's go to the tape and see what Stephen A. has to say about the proliferation of international greatness in the NBA and why it's not necessarily a great thing for the league.
My personal opinion is I don't believe an international player can be the face of the NBA. I know they're global iconic figures. Their popularity extends globally. But the NBA is an American-born sport. And it needs to resonate in America. And if it doesn't resonate in America, then it's not going to matter to America how you resonate beyond. And so that's just my mentality, UD. That's how I think about it. Not to say they can't be popular or what have you, but I just think about it that way. Shannon, as to your point that you made yesterday, UD wasn't here when you made it. I understand your point, and you're absolutely right. You can't want something more for somebody else than they want for themselves. And I totally get that. But that doesn't mean I'm not entitled to my wish list. And my wish is that Anthony Edwards changes his mind.
Stephen A. saying that, yeah, it may be good for the game overall on a global basis, but what about the NBA here in America, where, let's face it, for a lot of us, we've lost some interest. Part of that is the style of play, but maybe part of that for some people is the relative lack of American dominance that they were used to years ago. Now, I can understand counterpoints to this as well. Who is the face of Major League Baseball right now? I would have to say to you, it's Shohei Ohtani, who had 54 home runs and 59 stolen bases, and he captured everybody's imagination this season, going 50-50 in a year where he couldn't pitch. Oh, by the way, the guy who went 50-50 is also a 15-game winner who has a season where he struck out over 200 batters and finished in the top 5 in the Cy Young voting. He's Japanese, though. Does that harm his popularity? Look, it hasn't held him back, but I will say this. If Shohei Ohtani was American and doing the same thing, it would be Beatlemania in this country at a level that is even above what we've already seen. We used to marvel at the American stars of the past. Look at this. Dr. J, you remember Julius Erving? I know some of you do. You're old like me. Take a look at this. 1980 NBA Finals. I want you to consider this angle of maybe the most famous layup in the history of basketball. I would say it's the most impressive layup that I've ever seen. Mac McClung can do whatever gymnastics he wants to do to come in from the G League or wherever they bring that fucker in from every year to dominate the slam dunk contest. I will take this layup over 100 gimmicked up dunks for sheer impressiveness. And if you've seen it, you know what I'm talking about. But look at this angle and then consider he made that. A reverse layup. He made that. You tell me how that's fucking possible. Julius Erving. Fucking legend. Maybe we do need a couple more Julius Ervings to arrive in the NBA. American players that are able to go toe-to-toe with the Jokic's and Doncic's of the league.
Hey, OutKick fans on YouTube, if you enjoyed this episode, hit the subscribe button and make your way over to OutKick.com where you can watch the full episode.